Ole. So welcome to chapter 10. If you remember, we covered layouts in chapter 9, and you'll see that since the last video I've changed a few things around here. Okay, you can see my viewport there in the center, and remember I just turned the grid on and off using this button down here. The one you created may still have a grid in it, that's why it looks a little bit different, but there it is to turn it on and off. And you'll see that I've put my page information in here. Okay, we didn't specifically go into this in chapter 9, but just take note, this is a sample one, and there's the logo of the college and some basic information here. You'll see the ones that you come across are a lot more complicated than this, but this is a good starting point. And the other thing you'll notice is there's text here. This is entrance, patio, and then I've got a title for my layout, which is floor plan, and I've put the scale 1 to 50 in there. And I've also named my layout over here something besides layout 1 or layout 2. Okay, I went to rename and I changed it to floor plan. So yeah, so this is the example that we're going to use today to discuss annotation. All right, and annotation is basically when you add all other kinds of information to the drawing that you didn't specifically draw in model space. Okay, you can add annotation in model space, and I showed you a little example of that in the previous chapter, but we are going to do it inside layout. We're not going to do inside model, all right, because the scaling and stuff it's havoc. It's much easier to do it this way. So just to get back to annotation, it's not, well, it is also the page information on the side here, but specifically I'm referring to adding things like text, okay, multi-leaders, which are like little label things with a little pointy arrow, and dimensions, okay, which are of course very, very important. So we're going to start off with the first of those three things, which is text, okay, and there's two ways to put in text. And you'll notice that in this chapter 10, we're going to be looking at the annotation panel, which is up here on the ribbon. Okay, and the first thing we're going to look for is text. All right, and you'll see if I click the drop down arrow here, there's something called multi-line and single line text. All right, we're going to use multi-line text. Single line text is a lot more basic in its features, and it's not for our purposes. So just click multi-line text from that drop-down list. But if you click the big A, it should give you multi-line text anyway. All right, and there's a command for that, which I think is just mtext. Okay, so the first thing I did when I selected the tool, or the first thing that's asking me now that I've selected the tool, is to specify the first corner. Okay, so I'm going to zoom into my drawing here, and I'm going to put a label in this room, and I'm going to call it bedroom, let's say. Okay, so I'm going to specify a text box in which to start writing the word bedroom. So I'm going to click once, and it's much like drawing a rectangle. I'm going to move my mouse down to the bottom right here, just to basically define the shape, and then I'm just going to click once more, and there you'll see that it's just basically now popped up with this new part in the ribbon, okay, this text editor part, that's up here, and it's given me this little box with a ruler guide in here in which I can start typing, and I can turn off this ruler guide by just going up here and clicking ruler on the ribbon, okay, and then it disappears. So sometimes it's useful if you want to get really specific with your text spacing and that kind of stuff, but I'm just going to turn mine off for now. All right, so I'm going to call this bedroom, okay, so I can just start typing now, bedroom 1. And then I'm going to hit enter, and because it's called multi-line text, it means I can write on multiple lines. Okay, so I can hit enter here, and unlike enter, submitting a command at other times in AutoCAD, enter when you're inside text editing, at least inside multi-line text, will skip a line. Okay, quite familiar. Like if you used Notepad or anything like that, you hit enter to skip a line or to go to a new line. So all right, that's my title, bedroom 1. Now I'm going to add the square meterage, which I don't actually know, so I'm just going to make something up. I'm not going to measure it right now. When we put dimensions in, then we can always change it. So I'm just going to assume that this is, looks maybe 5 by 5, 25 square meters. So meters, and now I want to put the squared symbol in. And AutoCAD knows that it's quite often you might want to use the squared symbol or something like degree symbol, okay? It's quite a common one when drafting. So it's given you a useful little symbol tool here, or an option on this ribbon, and you go up to it. There's got the @ symbol right now, and just click on the drop down list there, and you'll see that now instead of having to find some kind of weird keyboard shortcut to write that tiny 2, that squared sign, okay, I can go up to the symbol menu and I can choose it here. There it is, okay, squared, it's towards the bottom, and I can put in other things, center line, omega. Okay, we're not going to get into that. But squared and degree, I think, there we go. Degrees is quite a useful one. Okay, but I'm going to go to squared, and there, 25 meters squared. All right, so now that I'm happy with what I've written there, okay, I can go about changing it a little bit more. What I need to do though is select the text first, all right? So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. What I mean by that is click and hold in the mouse button and then just drag your cursor over the text you want to select and then let go when you're done, okay? And then with this text selected, and make sure it's selected, you can go about changing something like the height, for example. So this 2.5 in this box here is the text height, all right? And I can change that to something else. If I type in 4, for example, 4 millimeters and hit enter, you'll see it's going to increase the size of my text there. And I can choose a different font for it here. Let's go to Blackadder. Wow, okay, that's hideous, but let's leave it at that anyway. I can change the color as well by going down here. Now, you should be familiar with this by layer setting, all right, because we looked at it in layers and properties. It means right now that its color is being dictated by the layer it's on, in which case it's red. So the layer I'm drawing on must be red. But I can override that here, and I can make it green if I wanted to. And I can change the formatting of it. I can change the alignment. I can make it bold and italic. All these familiar tools from any word processor, really. And then when I'm done with this, okay, I'm setting it up. I can go to Close Text Editor up here on the ribbon, or I can click outside of this gray box. All right. So the whole time I've been working here, I've been going inside the gray box and then up onto the ribbon to make a change, and then back inside the gray box. I haven't clicked outside anywhere on the rest of Paperspace. Okay. If I did that, it would basically accept the changes that I've made at that point, and take me back to my page, okay, to Paperspace. If I want to go back and change some text that I've made, you can simply double click on the text, okay, and go back to the text editor. And make sure you don't miss, because sometimes if you do, you'll end up going into the viewport and making it active instead of trying to get to the text, okay, and then you zoom in and you're like, whoa, what happened? It's because you just you weren't too accurate with your cursor. Okay, so just go back to model space, double click on the text, and then you can edit it like this. All right, so this is a good time to just introduce the concept of styles. All right, so when we dealt with layers and properties in the previous chapters, you could see that you could define a set of or a look and feel for something by putting those settings into a layer and putting those objects onto a layer, and then whatever changes you made to the layer were, you know, disseminated to all the objects that belong to it. And it's similar with annotation, okay? Multi-leaders, text and dimensions all have styles that define them, okay? And styles are kind of a bit like layers, but for annotation. So the whole time that I've been typing in this bedroom text here and changing the formatting, changing the font to this Blackadder, for instance, making it green, making it bold, and changing the height, okay? I have been basically making unique properties for this little text object that I've created. It's still part, well, if you look up here on the left of the ribbon, you can see what styles are loaded into drawing currently that will define my text, okay? And you'll see right now that if I mouse over the standard style, I haven't clicked, I'm just hovering over it, it's changing the way my text looks on the screen here, okay? That's because if I were to click on this, it's going to now apply this style to the text, okay? And it applied a few things, basically the color and the size, but some of the settings I still managed to override, okay? The green, for example, but if I change that back to by layer, I'll get to red. All right, I needed to have the text selected there first. Right, by layer, now it's back at red, okay? But as soon as I go into changing one of these properties up here, okay, so let's change it back to green, let's change it back to like 7, let's make it really big, and let's change this to, say, book, all right, book antiqua. I'm overriding the style settings, okay? So just be aware of that. I'm going to tell you now how to configure text style, and we're going to do that in a different way. When we're dealing with configuring text styles, we're not going to do it from this mText ribbon, okay? This is going to affect mostly just this text that we're drawing right now and any other object that I place in Paperspace, any other piece of multi-line text. So just be aware of styles, okay? But it'll make more sense when we go into it now. So far, I'm happy with this, okay? The font and the color, I'm just going to click Close Text Editor, or I can click outside this window, okay, to accept the changes. And now I can go back and put in more text as well. And you'll see that I have to specify that box. And when I start typing, I'm just going to call this exterior, for example. You'll see that it's no longer green or coming out in that font that I that I changed, it's conforming to that standard style, okay, until I go in here and start making changes. Once I do that, it'll start to override those style settings. And that's why when I've typed this new piece of text exterior, it's coming out in the default properties that are defined by the style. Arial is the font, it's not bold, the height is 2.5, that kind of stuff. All right, so I'm going to leave the word exterior there. I'm going to close this, and now we're going to look at some styles, all right, text styles. So we're going to go back to this part of the ribbon, okay, the home tab, and then look under annotation on the panel there, and then click this little drop out drawer over there, and you'll see all the various annotation objects that you can put in AutoCAD. Okay, we've got text up at the top here, and that's the current style that's loaded in the drawing standard, and the current style that I'm drawing in. Okay, if I change this to annotator, for example, and I started to put a piece of text in there, I'm just going to type anything, but you'll see now that it's opened this part of the ribbon, the style is no longer standard anymore, it's annotative, okay, because I had selected it from this drop down list to be current, which means that any new text object I drew would come out in that style. I'm going to change it back to standard though, that's what it was, and I'm going to delete that object I just did. Okay, let's go back there. So the top one is text and text style. This one is dimension style. This one is multi-leader, and we're going to go through these just now. And then tables, which we don't really deal with in this course. But if you use the correct ISO template, you should see standard here, and ISO 25 for the dimension style. Okay, but let's configure a text style. That's what we're doing right now. So you need to click this little thing. It's actually an icon, okay? So you go up to this panel, you click the little drop down like that. You go to that A with a little paintbrush next to it. And this opens text style, okay? And there's a command for it as well. You can look it up in your notes. And here you can see that the current text style is standard, okay? That tells me what's current, and then I've got a list of all the styles that are currently loaded into the drawing. In this case, I only have two. One is called annotative, and one is called standard. And I'm using standard right now. So I can make some changes here. And when I do, you'll notice that because I did this kind of vanilla text over here, this exterior word, and I didn't change any of the properties in the ribbon, the text changes, or the changes I make to the style right now, you'll see will affect this one over here. Not this one, because we gave that one unique settings. We made it green, bigger, different font, etc. But have a look out for this exterior word. It's going to change now. So let's choose a different font for it, okay? And I'm configuring the text style. So let's go to Corbell. No, I don't like that. Franklin. Sure. Franklin, okay, font style, you can choose, sometimes you can choose it, the weight of the font from this list, other times you can choose it from here, bold, italic, or something like that. My height is 2.5, I'm going to make it bigger, I'm going to make it 5, let's say 5 millimeters. And then I can click apply when I'm happy with making those changes to the style, okay? And if I want to create a new style, I can do that by clicking the new button, all right? So right now I'm modifying standard, I'm just going to hit apply right now. And then close on this window, and you'll see there that exterior updated, okay, to the new font and stuff that I had set for the style. Now let's just go back to textiles, okay, and I'm going to get you to create a new one. So instead of modifying the standard style, we can create one of our own, okay, and I'm just going to click the new button over here, and I'm going to call this one Tim Text. Okay, you can make it whatever you want. And now it's going to give me a choice to configure these options the same way we modified the standard one. So I'm going to use Niagara Solid, wild. Height 5, pretty happy with that. I'm just going to hit apply, all right, and then close. And you'll notice that it hasn't made a change to that. That's because that one is still stuck in the standard style, okay? I need to go to annotation over here and then change the style with the object selected, okay? So it works a lot like properties in that sense. If I don't have anything selected, it'll tell me what the current style is. And if I do have something selected, it'll tell me what the style of that selected object is, okay? So right now, if I go up to annotation with this exterior word selected, it's saying it's standard. I'm going to change it now to Tim Text. So I clicked on this drop-down list and it gave me a little preview of the new text style I created. And if I click on that, you'll see it will now apply to that object. Okay, and I can also go and apply it to this. I can select this one and I can go and change it from standard to Tim Text. And you'll see that some of the changes carried through. Okay, it looks like it changed the scale, but not everything. I might need to go in, sorry, I see I made the same mistake I spoke about earlier. I double clicked in the wrong place. I might need to go back into bedroom 1 and just clear some of these settings because it seems like it's still being overriding the style. All right. So yeah, just something to play around and get familiar with. Okay, so that's how to manipulate and create text styles. This is quite a hideous style though at the moment, so I'm just going to change it back to something a bit better before we continue. Okay, so I've made some changes back to that Tim text style, so it's a little bit more readable now. And you'll see that there were a couple other objects that I had put in here before we started the chapter, which were patio and entrance. And you see they look different because if I go to annotation, they're still in the standard style, okay? But these two new ones that I created, I put in the Tim text style. But that's fine. I can also change the style of these things by just changing their properties, okay? Remember, properties apply to text objects and annotation objects as well. And so if I go down here with these both selected, okay, so it'll change the properties for them both at the same time. And I go to style, I'll see they're both on standard there. I'm going to change this to Tim text from this drop down list, and there you go. You'll see that it's updated to the font now. But I think it's still left it on the layer. That's right. Okay, so text styles define some things about it, like the font and the size, but it doesn't define the color or the layer. All right, those things you still need to change manually. Let me just remind you that this text that I drew down here as part of my page information, and this text here, I all did using the multi-line text tool. All right. I didn't use some special other paperspace page information tool. There's no such thing. Okay, I just drew these lines by hand using the line tool and then placing text in like that. Okay, so just a quick tip. And now let's have a look at multi-leaders, right? Multi-leaders, you're going to find them up here on the annotation panel. We're going to do dimensions last, but there's a multi-leader, okay? And it's, let's go to the notes. There's an example of multi-leaders. Okay, they're objects that are used to create text with leader lines, such as general labels, reference labels, bubbles, and callouts. A leader line is this thing. You've got some text over here, or maybe these bubbles, or this kind of symbol, the page number or something, and then out of it shoots this line with an arrowhead. That's the leader, okay? And a multi-leader means that you can have multiple leaders and all kinds of different attachments to the multi-leader, like text or a symbol, etc. And multi-leaders, like text, are also can be configured using a style. So we'll do both, okay? We'll place a few, and then we'll make our own style of multi-leader. So let's get back to AutoCAD here. So the way you place a multi-leader, just right off the bat, is just to go up here to the annotation panel and look at multi-leader, or leader in this case. And if I click the drop-down arrow list, you see I can get some options here, different flavors, all right, or different ways to modify existing leaders. Let's just click on the top one for now, the basic one, okay, leader. And it's going to say, please specify leader arrowhead location. Actually, it doesn't say please, it just says specify. You know, AutoCAD is so rude. And I'm going to choose the windowsill, for example. So the same way I would place the first point of a line, I'm going to place the first point of this leader, the arrowhead, in other words, the thing it's pointing at. So I'm just going to choose the sill of this window, for example. And then it's going to say specify leader landing and location. So I've clicked once, and now I'm going to click a second time to specify where I want the text and the landing. The landing is the part where the line comes up from the thing you're pointing it at, and then it goes horizontal over to the line. That's the landing part, like a airplane landing. No? Okay. I'm going to click a second time. And then it's taking me to something that just looks very familiar. It's the text editor, okay? Because I'm now can enter in the text part of this multi-leader. So I'm going to say windowsill. And you'll see that the text that's coming out here is also part of text styles, okay? And it's still part of standard. That's why it's coming out in this Franklin Gothic font, whatever. I'm going to change that later. I'm just going to leave it on standard right now, okay? And I'm happy with the way the windowsill is written there. I can also hit enter at this point to skip a line, and I can type in some more stuff over here. Maybe I want to say it's made out of wood, okay? And then just like text editing, when you're done, I can click outside this little gray text area. Let me zoom in here. Or I can go up here to the ribbon and click close text editor. All right, the same tools are available here, bold. I can select the text and I can center justify it, etc. Okay, I'm going to click OK. I can change the size too. Click OK, and there it is. Okay, now although the text came out in black when I was busy doing it in the text editor, now that I've saved it, it's actually gone to the proper color of the multi-leader, which is dictated by the color of the layer. Okay, because if I look at selected up here, look at the properties of this thing, because it has properties like any other object. I can see the color set by layer, and my current layer is dims. All right, so I've actually created a layer on which to put all of these things, which is helpful, and you should too as you go along. So there we go. I made a multi-leader. That wasn't so difficult. And then if I want to make another one, I go to the multi-leader thing again, and I can type over here door. Let me do that one. Okay, so there's a few multi-leaders. Okay, now if I want to edit multi-leaders, there's two ways I can do it, or two parts that I can modify about it. I can modify the leader part, which is the line part, or I can modify the text part. And you do it separately, okay? If I want to modify the text of a multi-leader, don't double-click on the line part. Double-click on the text part, the same way you would edit multi-line text. So I'm going to double-click on the windowsill part. It's going to take me back to my text editor, and I can make a change here. Okay, let's say I want that to be metal. And then I can go close again. If I want to edit the line part of multi-leader, just select the multi-leader by clicking on it, and you'll see some grips appear over the lines. Okay, and now if I can, or if I just grab this grip, I click once to sort of grab the grip, and now I can just move my mouse around and stretch it to a new place. And you'll see that as I bring it past the sort of center line of this text, it flips to the other side. Okay, that's quite normal. AutoCAD does that to just try and make sure that you don't ever have the line going through the text because the angle is so extreme. It just switches it to the other side. But I can basically move my mouse around and point it at a new location, and you'll see snapping is useful here as well. I'm going to leave it snap to the sill, but let me maybe snap it to the far side. Okay, so that was quite easy to do that. And then if I want to make some other changes, I just have to hover over the grip. Okay, so right now it's saying I can add a vertex. In other words, this is a kink to the line. So if I want to make it, jog around some geometry or put a kink in, let's get kinky. All right, I just add vertex. And now you'll see that it's basically extending a new pointed line out from that point. And it's asking me if I want to add another one. Yeah, sure, let's add another one, and then there we go. Okay, so now I've got a couple of bends in this line, and then if I hit escape to deselect everything, you'll see that the arrowhead is placed on the very end of it. And I can also split a multi-leader up into a couple of into multiple arrowheads basically, so I can have one label pointing to 2, 3, 4 things. Okay, so I'm going to hit undo a few times to go back to the way it was, the more simple landing, or the more simple line part. I'm going to go and select it again, and then instead of going up to the arrowhead grip, I'm going to move up to the corner here where it meets this landing, where it meets the landing over there and the leader part of the line here. If I hover over that grip, you'll see it gives me a little selection menu here, and I'm going to click on add leader. And now you'll see that I can simply click to place a new leader, and every time I click I can place a new one like that. Okay, so I can have it pointing at multiple objects, and then when I'm done I can just hit enter, and there we go. Okay, so I've managed to split that into a whole lot of things, and that's quite useful. So you don't have to put in 5 multi-leaders. You can put in one, and you can just point it at 5 different locations. And if you want to delete them, you hit the erase key, same way you delete any other object in AutoCAD. So let's have a look now at setting up a multi-leader style. Okay, so let me undo that actually, so we can have this one still pointing there. I'm going to move this text over here. I'm just using the move tool. All right, so the same way we defined a text style by going up here to the annotation menu, clicking on that icon, we're going to do the same but down here next to multi-leader. Okay, multi-leader style, or you can type M-leader style. It's written there. And here it's you've got the list of multi-leader styles in AutoCAD right now. It tells you what the current is as well, just like the text style editor. And we can modify these, or we can create a new one. So I'm going to create a new one this time. I'm going to call it Tim multi-leader style, or just Tim ML. That's cool. And it says start with standard. This is useful in to set like a base level of configuration for this style. So I'm going to base it on the standard one. So when I open it, it'll already look like standard, and then from that point on I can go and make changes. Okay, I can use annotative as well. It'll basically, any style that you have loaded in the drawing will become an option here that you can base your new one on. So you don't have to configure everything from scratch. If you like a style and you want to make If you like an existing style and you want to make just a few changes, then just choose that existing one as the start with one. Okay, and I'm going to modify standard in this case, but I'm going to create a new one out of it called TimML. So now that I've chosen the name, I'm going to click continue. And you can see I've got quite a few things I can set up here. I'm not going to go through all of them. You just need to just play around with them yourself. But have a look at, for instance, I'm on the first tab here, leader format. I can change this type of arrowhead. I go down to arrowhead here, symbol, and I click on this drop-down list, and I can change it to all of these different things here, like a dot maybe. That one is a filled dot, a dot blank. Okay, that's an empty dot. A closed blank, So you see the closed filled, sorry. So you can see that the arrowhead is now filled in with the color from the layer, or it's just the outline of one. Open 30. So there's a few different ones I can choose here. I'm going to leave mine on closed blank. Actually, no, closed filled. I think that's the default. I can change the color here by layer, by block, etc. Okay. Why is that on by block? Not sure. I'm going to leave it there. Leader structure, you can specify the maximum number of points for the leader line. Okay, so this will have two, basically, the landing, one over there and then the last one down there. But you can change it so that it always has three, and that will let you put an extra kink into it when you place it. I'm going to leave it on 2 for now, not too crazy about that. And then I can change the text over here as well, like where I want it to be attached, leader connection, horizontal or vertical. So you'll see that it either comes out the side of the text or it comes out from underneath it. Okay, but I'm happy with these settings right now. But I can change the text to something else. Okay, remember that example in the notes here. If I scroll up, you'll see that in addition to text, like it says OK here, but I can also put in a symbol like that. So I can do that by changing the multi-leader type from mtext to something else like a block. And then I can change the block from this source block setting into something here like a circle or a detail call out, and where you can enter in the sheet number and that kind of stuff. You can get pretty advanced with this stuff, but I'm just going to leave it on the pretty much the basic settings, which is mtext. Leader format, change my arrowhead there. Okay, that's all good. I'm going to click OK now that I'm done configuring this multi-leader style, and you'll see it has appeared in the list now. And I can also choose to set this one as current if I want to, if I don't want to go back and change it here. I'm going to click close now, and I think these ones are now, they're still part of standard style. Okay, so I'm just going to select them both, and I can right click on them and get their properties, and I can change the style to the new one that I just created from down here, multi-leader style, change it to TimML. Okay, and because I based it on the standard style, you'll see it looks almost the same. There's not really a change there. Okay, so that's multi-leader styles. And then let's have a look at dimensioning. All right, I'm just going to delete these over here because I want to make space for some dimensions around this thing. Okay, and that's basically what I'm going to use to indicate the sizes, so that the builder, or whoever the plan is for, will have a size guide to be able to understand what the size of things are, which is very important. But don't forget that also that this floor plan is to 1:50 scale. Okay, if I double click inside this viewport, you'll see that my scale is set to 1:50 there. Okay, which means that even if I didn't put a single damn dimension on here, if I printed this thing out correctly at A3 and gave it to someone, because it's at 1:50 scale, they could take a scale ruler, measure on the drawing, and then do that scale calculation, in which case 1:50, so I'd make it 50 times bigger. Then I could, get the real world dimension without actually having it written in there for me. But no one, you're not going to walk on site and see the foreman out there with a scale ruler measuring your drawing because you didn't put a single dimension on it. Okay, he would flip out completely. You have to put dimensions in. Okay, and there's a few ways that you can do it, and there's a few types of dimensions you can use. So we're going to go for the basic one, and then we'll go through some of the more special ones. It's up here on the annotation panel. Okay, everything in this chapter is going to be found pretty much up here. Text, multi-leader, and here's dimension. It's big. All right, if you click this big button, you get a kind of what I call a freestyle dimension. It's like a one-size-fits-all. And then you basically click on the button, and then it's going to say select objects or specify first extension line origin. Okay, that sounds confusing, but basically it's asking you to select the first point of the start of the measurement. Okay, let me just do it and you'll see what it means. So I'm going to zoom in here so I can be accurate with my mouse, and I'm going to say I want the length of this wall. So I'm going to choose this as my first point and make sure that your snapping is on, okay? And now you'll see that as I am moving my mouse out, I'm getting a line. The dimension is updating live with the current length, and I'm going to move my mouse down here and make sure that it snaps on the second corner. I'm going to click the second time now. Okay, and now I can pan as well. Remember, even while I'm busy using a tool, I can still pan around. And now I can move my mouse up and down and set the spacing of this dimension. In other words, how far I want it to sit away from the drawing. And then I click a third time to place it there. All right, and you'll see now that I still have the tool selected. Now that I've placed this dimension, I can just go and place some more simply by clicking. Okay, so I click 1, 2 times, it gave me 280 there. I'm going to go down here and get this wall dimension. Okay, oops, I think I missed it, but we'll change that just now. And then let's get the dimension of this patio space. Okay, there we go. And now when I'm done, I can just hit enter or escape and to go back to my drawing space, okay, or to cancel the tool. So there's a few dimensions, and you'll see that I think I've set up a style for these already. That's why they're nice and legible, or at least they seem quite large. But we can change all those things with the style, okay? And we can do individual properties for them. But there you go. That's a basic kind of freestyle dimension, okay? The way I put them in, actually, you could refer to as a linear dimension. In other words, they all sit at exactly horizontal or vertical, okay? If I wanted to put in an angled dimension, let's say I want it to be parallel to that line, okay? I want to measure that line from there to there. Instead of using this freestyle dimension, I'm going to specify that I want an angled dimension, or aligned dimension, excuse me. So a linear dimension is this thing here, the one that goes along horizontal, perfectly horizontal or vertical. I'm going to go to this little icon here, not the big one. Click this drop down arrow on the side here and just choose aligned, okay? And I'll show you what the difference is between these two. But let's click on aligned, and now I'm going to specify this is my first point, this is my second point, and you'll see that that angle or the dimension is now stuck at that angle of the line, okay? No matter where I move my mouse, it's not going to change the angle. It's going to be fixed at 45, or basically reference to that line. If I were to put a linear dimension here, or a freestyle dimension, okay, let's go up to linear and choose that one, and choose the same points as the previous dimension. You'll see here that linear is not giving me the option of having it at an angle, okay, and it's actually giving me a different measurement for that reason. It's only measuring it strictly from left to right, like this, or if I want to move my mouse down here, up, down, okay. And it's telling me that that measurement is 280. It's right. If I were to measure just from there to that corner, but moving only, completely vertically, it would be 280. But if I measure it this way, and this is the nature of triangles, you should understand this from basic high school geometry, is that this will be longer, okay? And I used the aligned dimension to get that dimension for me, okay, that longer dimension. Linear won't work in this case, and that's the difference between linear and aligned, okay? If you have a line like that, that's at an angle, use an aligned dimension, unless you specifically want to measure it from top to bottom and disregard the angle like I have with this linear dimension. All right, so I hope that's not too confusing. I'm going to leave that one over there. And let's try another type here, which is angular, okay? So I can use this to specify the slope or an angle between objects. Let's say I want to measure the angle between this line and this door, okay? I know it's 90 degrees, but let's just do it for the exercise anyway. So it's going to say select arc, circle, line, or specify vertex. Oh, and just one thing to note, I've been dimensioning in paper space, okay? I have not double-clicked inside the viewport to make it active and then start dimensioning in model space. That would be a mistake. I want to make sure that my viewport is not active, that I'm on my page layout, okay? And then start dimensioning. That'll make sure that all your dimensions come out to scale, etc. You'll understand this later. All right, so sorry, let's get back to that angular dimension tool. Okay, it's going to say select arc, circle, line, or specify vertex. So I'm going to select one of the lines I want to measure the angle between. In this case, it will be this one. And the second line, which AutoCAD is asking for me now, is this one. Okay, and there. And I can now move my mouse around that point, and you can see it will draw the angle out at a different angle. I can measure like the back side of the angle, or the underneath kind of part using an extension coming out from the door. Or if I move my mouse into this area here, it'll give me that the dimension I actually want, or at least in the quadrant that I want. And it shows me it's 90 degrees. Okay, I already knew that. If I wanted to measure, say, the distance between this one and this one, or the angle, it's probably 45. Let's try that again. So angular, select this line, select this line. There we go. Okay, 45. And so I'm just moving my mouse out now. I haven't clicked yet. And I can do that to set the distance, all right, and the direction of this. So I can even kind of measure the outside angle if I wanted to by just moving my mouse around. And when I'm happy with this, I can just click to place it. 135, let's use that. Okay, there we go. So that was basically a demonstration of an angular dimension, a linear dimension, and a aligned dimension over there. Okay, and those are the three basic types that you use most often. And then when it comes to perhaps giving that dimension of something with a curve, like a circle or an arc, or in this case a door swing, which is actually an arc, okay, I can use another type of dimension, which I can specify the arc length for one, but I'm going to use a radius or diameter here. These are good for circles and curved objects. So if I want the radius of that door swing, I'm going to select the radius option of, or the radius flavor of dimension. It's going to say select arc or circle. I'm going to click on this door swing, and there you go. I can now click a third time to place where this dimension goes, and you'll see that it is basically referencing the center point of this arc as well. If this thing was, if you imagine it as being a quarter of a circle, the center point of that circle will be right there, and there's an extension line that comes out from that dimension and points towards the center, and you can change that in dimension style, so you can actually turn it off, which we'll check out just now. But there we go. So I put in that radius happens to be 1105 millimeters. Let's get a diameter of that symbol over there. Okay, you wouldn't normally dimension a symbol, but let's do it anyway for the hell of it. So I'm going to go down to diameter. I'm going to select this one here, and then I can click a third or a second time to now place it, and it's telling me is 318.29 millimeters diameter. Okay, that's a circle in the symbol there. All right, so there's a cool couple of dimensions. Okay, hello, Fraulein. Quickly, I want to show you how to adjust the dimensions afterwards. Okay, we're going to modify them. So the way we do that is really simple. Okay, you just select the dimension, and then you'll see grips appear on it. Okay, and if I move these grips around, I can change the dimension. Okay, I'm going to click on this one, and you'll see that I can now pick it up and basically drag it to a new point. So I can, if I want to measure the sill, for example, I don't need to delete this whole dimension. I can just resize it, and I can grab those grips and snap it to the end of the sill like that. And then I can grab the grips up here, and I can change the spacing, and I can also grab the grip that's on my text here, and I can move that around as well. You can see I can drag the text off to the side like that. If you have a lot of dimensions that start stacking up next to one another, you might run out of space to place text in one of them, especially if the thing you're dimensioning is very thin. And so you can move the text out of the way like that. And in fact, if I actually hover over that text, you see I can actually detach it from the line. Okay, it gives me a little option here. Similar to how we split multi-leaders, I hovered over the grip and it gave me a couple of extra options. I have the same thing here. If I hover over the grip for the text, it gives me a little selection of stuff to do here, and I can say move with leader, for example, and then it'll let me stick the text somewhere else, and then it still attaches it to the dimension with a leader like that. And I mentioned stacking up dimensions. So if I want to continue now adding dimensions all along this wall, so I'm going to go from sill to sill and then from sill to wall, and I want them all to kind of line up. I can just go up here to dimension, and if you look down here at the bottom on the command line, it's giving me a couple of options here. I can choose to continue. Okay, so I can hit C, or I can just click on continue down here, and it'll ask me specify the first extension line you want to continue. So I'm going to continue from this dimension, so I'm going to select that line there. That's where I want to continue from, and now you'll see that it's starting a dimension snap to the edge of that line and also in line with it vertically that way. And now I can continue just placing dimensions by clicking over and over again. I'm running out of space here, but until I'm done, and then I can just hit enter. Okay, and so I can just continue that dimension, and they're all at the right starting point and height or level as well, and I can continue my whole way around the drawing like that. It's just an easy way to work with dimensions. Okay, but when it comes to modifying them, just remember that grips are the easiest way to do it. Let's have a look at setting up dimension styles now. So we go up to the annotation menu, okay, familiar with this, and you can see that now that we've been creating different text styles and stuff, now those styles are current. And the dimension style you'll probably have is ISO 25, okay? But if we click on this icon next to it, dimension style, type in dim style as the command, we can set up a dimension style here. So there they are, all the ones that are currently loaded into the drawing. I've got one called Tim, I must have created this one earlier, and there's ISO 25. So let's modify ISO 25 and make it into something that looks more architectural, okay? This one has these little arrows in it, but you see that if you pick up one of the plans lying around here at the college, it's got something called an architectural tick, which is it's a different style of dimension that's more common in the industry. So let's go to, I'm actually going to delete this style, delete, yes, and I just right clicked on it and deleted it, and I'm going to make a new one, okay, and I'm going to use ISO 25 as my basis because that's a good starting point. So I'm going to click on new, and I'm going to come up with a name for it. I'm going to call it Tim Dim Sum. Dim Sum is good, wow. Start with ISO 25, use for all dimensions, just leave those settings like that, and then click continue. Takes a moment. Okay, so you'll see there is a crap load of settings here, okay? It's mad. I'm just going to tell you the major ones to look out for, but you can really configure how much the line extends past there and how much it extends past there, and the type of arrowhead and the spacing of the text and the size of the text and how far it is away from the line, and if it's aligned with the line or if it tilts. It's maddening, okay? So you need to just, depending on where you work or what the standard is in your region, you need to set up your dimension and text and multi-leader style accordingly, okay? But the big ones to look out for to make it look kind of architectural style is have a look at the tabs up here at the top. Go to lines first, and then just make sure that something called extend beyond dim lines is on, okay? And make it 1.25. That's 1.25 millimeters. And you'll see a preview here of the changes that you're making to the style. If I were to make this 4, for example, okay, and type enter, you'll see that that little piece of line there just extended out a little bit further. And if I make it 14, enter, you'll see it got much longer, okay? So that's what that extend beyond dim lines mean. This is the dim line here, and that's the extension past it. So I'm going to leave mine on 1.25, enter, there we go. And then I can change some other settings here. Don't worry about that for now. Let's go to symbols and arrows, okay? So there's my arrowheads right now in the dimension. Can I zoom in? No. But right now it's a little arrowhead, okay? I'm going to change that to architectural tick from this list. That's going to be my first one, and my second one you'll see changed automatically. I can actually have them unique. I can actually have one be one type, and for instance the second one be an arrow or a small dot, okay? It's unlikely that you'd have two different types. It's like wearing odd socks, but just make them the same, and they usually are by default. So I chose architectural tick for the first and second one, and then I can choose a leader here as well. This is more relevant when you're using a different type of dimension, like something, for instance, that's a diameter or something like that, okay? It's not quite the same as multi-leaders, so I'm going to leave that on closed filled. My arrow size, I can change that here as well, in which case, because my arrow is actually an architectural tick, it will define the size of that, and that's in millimeters, but leave it on 2.5. And let's have a look at text. That's all fine. I'm not going to make any changes there. Text style standard, so I can actually change the text of the multi-leader to conform to my text style, okay, because it is actually a type of text. I'm going to make it Tim text. All right, there we go. Already set up that style, so I'm going to select that from my list. Aligned with dimension line, so you can see if I change horizontal there, no matter what angle my dimension's at, my text will always be horizontal. That makes it quite comfortable to read, that's a personal preference. I'm going to leave it on aligned with dimension line. Let's go to fit. Use overall scale of 1. Just make sure that that is reading 1 over there, and you don't have anything else ticked here. Primary units. precision. All right, so you'll see right now it's telling me 28.22 millimeters, or it's giving me fractions of millimeters. I don't need to be that precise. So I'm going to change my precision from the number and then 2 decimal points. In other words, 0.00. I don't want to see the points, whatever. I just want one nice round millimeter number. So I'm going to change the precision to just 0. Okay, so I won't have a decimal after that. And you'll see my little preview is updated now to just show me 56.28. Much neater. Okay. And there's one more thing I want to change is just go to lines, extend beyond ticks. Okay, so if I type in a big number here, you'll see immediately what it does. I'm going to type in 20, enter there. Okay, it was that extension over there. So I'm going to make it the same as the extension beyond the dim line, 1.25. Hit enter. Okay, and now that's looking like good architectural style. All right, I'm going to click OK now to save all the settings that I've made in this dimension style window. And you'll see that my Tim Dim Sum style that I created here is now updated with those changes I made inside that previous window. And now I'm going to click close. Okay, and it hasn't made any changes yet because I haven't actually assigned that style to these dimensions yet. All right, so I'm just going to select them first. I'm going to select them just by clicking on them one by one. And now I'm going to go to annotation over here, and you'll see that it's giving me no particular style at the moment. So I'm going to choose one from the list. Come on. Oh, sorry, ISO 25, clicking on the wrong list. Tim Dim Sum, there it is. Okay. And now you'll see that if I hit escape here, it's updated. Okay, it's not an arrow anymore. It's giving me that nice architectural tick. I've got a little extension beyond the tick in that direction and in that direction. And my text looks like it's in the same font as my text style, in which I wrote bedroom. So this is nice. This is a good example of some cohesive styles, okay? My text styles and my dimension styles are all working together. They're the same color. They've got a nice architectural tick. The font size is more or less the same. It's the same type of font, etc. Okay, so you can go and set up your text and multi-leader and dimension styles however you like. But this is a good starting point, and this is the one I suggest you learn first because it's the one I'm going to ask you to set up in your assessments as well. Okay, so yeah, it's a good one to know. And there we go, chapter 10. Okay, we looked at inserting multi-line text, configuring a text style, and just remember that when I was up there working in the ribbon, okay, I was overriding the text style properties, okay, by making things green and changing it to that crazy old style English font, etc. So just be aware of how properties of text and how text styles and dimension styles influence dimensions. Okay, it's a little bit confusing. So when you're just starting off, just use the standard ones that are in there. Use standard text style, use standard multi-leader style, and use the ISO 25 dimension style, okay, which should all be part of the drawing already because you used the correct template when you started, I hope. But once you've gone through all the effort of configuring your own styles, okay, making it look just the way you want to. You don't have to do this every time you make a new AutoCAD drawing, okay? Just save that as a drawing template file, a .dwt file, and then you can specify that as your template instead of that ISO one that I always speak about. And then you will have already page setups done for you. You will have dimension and text and multi-leader styles built in. You can even have a base set of layers on which to begin drawing. You'll have all your page information saved, all of this stuff. And so you're ready to just go straight into model space and start drawing stuff. You don't have to worry about configuring all that shit later on. Okay, so let me just show you how to do that because I've spoken about it, but I haven't shown you exactly how to do it yet. So I will just go to Save As. And from this big A icon on the menu here, Save As, and instead of clicking on Save the Drawing, which would just give me a usual DWG file that I could then share with whoever, I'm going to go to Drawing Template, okay, DWT file over here. And then when I click on that, it's going to ask me to specify the name of the folder, and I just click Save, okay. I'm not going to actually save this one, but it'll dump a DWT file wherever you chose in your computer. And then when you go to Start, just go to Open Files over here. Okay, and then select wherever you save the template, click open, and that will kick you off inside the template with all your work already there, okay, when you saved it from the previous time. All right, there's just 2 more things I want to cover before we move on to the next chapter, chapter 11. One of them is modifying the viewport after placing dimensions. All right, so this is going to happen when you annotate in Paperspace, all right, is that you set up your view that you want of your model through the viewport, and you give it a nice scale and everything like that, and you go and place your dimensions. But if you want to come back to this drawing and maybe change the position of that viewport, or change the scale at least, and maybe pan your drawing around, show a different part of it, okay, you don't want to have to redo your dimensions all over again. And I'll show you what happens if I do that, okay? If I zoom out here, you'll see that my dimensions, they haven't stayed stuck to the corners, okay? Even though when I placed them, they did snap. And they will stay stuck. There's just one thing you need to do to fix this, all right? So if I go in here and I change the scale, so I did it just by zooming. If I went over here and it was on scale 1 to 50, okay, all right, you can actually see the dimensions updated a little bit there, but I'm going to change the dimension, I'm going to change the scale to something else, 1 to 40, let's say, okay. My dimensions kind of snap there for a second, but not perfectly, okay? And let's say I kind of pan this a little bit this way. I don't want to have to redo all these dimensions now because they don't line up. But because I use snapping, okay, they are still associated to those points. You just need to enter in one particular command, and it will make sure that everything snaps back, even though you've made some changes to the viewport, okay? And that command is dim regen, and it's in your notes. DIMREGEN. So type it in, okay? Make sure no other tools selected or anything, okay? So hit cancel a few times on your canvas. After you've done changing your viewport, scale, the pan, whatever, type in dim regen, hit enter, and there you'll see, okay? It kind of refreshed my view a little bit, and my dimensions snap back to those corners, okay? And I'm going to do one more change here. Let's change this scale. I'm just going to make it something random by zooming out here, and I'm going to pan up towards the top left corner here. I'm going to go back to my paper space, and I'm going to hit that command again, or type it in, dim regen. Okay, and there you'll see, all right, my dimensions have now re-glued to those corners again, even though I changed the position and scale of this viewport. So you don't need to redo your dimensions, which is great. Okay, it saves you time in case you make changes to your layout later on. But you'll notice that 2 elements did not scale or move position relative to the model. And that was my patio and entrance label. Those are multi-line text objects that I have placed just kind of floating on top of the viewport, and so they didn't move with the model, okay? And where you use these things, for example, if I were to write bedroom in this area over here, that's probably a good reason to put that piece of text into model space, okay? i.e. on your model tab instead of on in paper space, because it means that if you do make scaling adjustments later, you don't have to go and reposition these. All right, I don't mind just taking this patio text and then moving it to the right place in the drawing again. But if you do this a lot and it becomes a little bit tedious, then I'll mention the second thing now, which is to annotate the model space. All right. So I teach the method of modeling in paper space. It's a lot more logical, and that's how AutoCAD is set up to dimension from default. But there are some cases when annotating model space has its advantages, all right? Like putting in a bedroom label, so that when if I go back to my layout over here, the bedroom label would stay stuck. And I'll give you an example there. I'm just going to hit undo a few times to get back to where my plan was before. Okay, now imagine I put in some multi-line text here, and I wrote bedroom. All right, bedroom. I can see it there. Maybe make it a bit larger. Okay. Okay, but now if I move this around like this, you'll see, and I go dim regen, remember? My dimensions move, but not my bedroom label. Okay, so this is a great case to do this label in model space. So I'm just going to hit undo here. I'm going to delete that bedroom label, and I'm going to put it in model space instead. Okay, so I'm going to go to my model tab. I'm going to type it in here, but you need to pay attention to the scale because it's going to be really small. Remember, when I was placing this text here in layout, my text height was 2.5 millimeters, okay? 2.5 millimeters is going to be minuscule in your actual one-to-one drawing space, your modeling space. So I'll show you an example. Let's go and put in multi-line text. I'm going to put it around about here. I'm going to say bedroom, 25 square meters, put in the square symbol. Okay, now when I click close, where did it go, right? It's there, it's just really small. Look, if I zoom in here, there it is, it's tiny, okay? So if I double click on this thing to edit it and select the text, you'll see it's only 2.5 millimeters. That's why I can't see it. So you're going to have to make it something big, like 300, okay? Close text editor. And now if I zoom out, it's a lot more legible. Okay, and now if I go back to my floor plan, you'll see there's my label over there. And if I scale this, it scales with the drawing, okay, and it pans with the drawing. So that's a little tip if you want to just kind of do some of those labels in model space instead of in paper space, okay. And the other thing is if you want to place a dimension, which is unlikely, but if you do, you need to increase the scale there as well. So remember, our dimensions are set up to be scaled to our paper, and so they're very small. The text height there is probably only a few millimeters. If I do the same thing in model space, I'm going to have the same problem as this text over here. It's going to be too small. So I'm going to put in a linear dimension here on this windowsill, just to give an example. And you'll see look how tiny that is. Okay, if I have to zoom in a lot to see that text over there. And then on the corners, I can barely see that arch tick that I set up in my style. Okay, so in order to increase the scale of this, I just right click on it and I get its properties. Or I can go over here to this little properties shortcut icon, remember? So I'll go to properties. And then you need to look for something called, scroll down the list here. Dim scale overall 1. Okay, now if I change this setting, it's going to change the setting just for this one dimension. It's the only one I have selected. It won't affect any other dimensions because I don't have them selected. But I'm going to change this to something like maybe 12. Let's see what happens. Nope, still not so much. 200. Oh, that's quite big. Maybe 100. Okay, that's better. So there you go. Okay, I scaled my text up to a good size and I scaled my dimension using that dim overall scale setting up to a good size. And now if I go back to my floor plan, you can see there's my dimension sitting underneath the one I have in paper space. Okay, this is my paper space one, and there's my delete that one, and there's my one that I drew in model space. So it's a little bit bigger, and you'll see that if I scale now in my viewport, it scales with the drawing. Okay, because it's stuck there. It's placed in model space. Right, so those are just two examples of annotating in model space and when it might be helpful. Okay, but otherwise I suggest just keep your dimensioning in paper space. And that brings us to the end of this chapter, chapter 10. And we'll have a look at chapter 11, which is the last chapter in the notes. And we're going to plot our drawing basically. And then you're done. Yes.